Oh my gosh, what a nightmare.
Oh my gosh, what a nightmare. Oh my gosh, what a
Oh my god. Hold on, I'm getting an echo. Jeez Louise.
Jeez Louise.
Okay, this is a nightmare. All right. Okie doke. All right. Well, we got we got a little bit started. Hello, Pam Frenchman. Here, let me. I got a mouse so I could do this. All right. Pam, shine like a diamond. Hello, hello. I'm sorry I'm late, and I know it's Friday night. It's everything. I was all scheduled to go live, and all of a sudden I realized the documents were not showing up. Yeah, so that was fun. Hello, Raggedy Susan. And so I don't know. A lot of people catch stuff on the replay, and that is okie dokie. I understand schedules. I worked about 40 hours in 3 days. So let me go ahead and, without all the fuss, I didn't put my regular intro up because, yeah, the music, they wanted to strike it. So then, my intro won't play. My other intro won't play. So there you go. Hello, Susan. All right, I am going to go ahead and bring Tony on. Oh, wait, let me add him. I had to do, yeah, the link didn't work. Everything. Hello, there you are, Tony.
Good evening, everybody.
All right, so we're going to try really hard to get through this, and maybe it'll be a little bit easier. I am so sorry for the craziness, but hey, it's a holiday weekend, and so how are you doing, Tony?
I'm good. I am glad the weekend is here. I've had a terrible sinus headache all week, and it seems to have magically lifted in the last hour, so I'm like really happy. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I have, oh my gosh, it's just been insane for me this week. And I'm afraid close out everything else, so no echoes. All right, we good. So, the first question, we've talked a little bit this week, but and oh my gosh, were you overwhelmed by all the documents that came through?
Yes, because I was at work, and so the first thing, I couldn't get it to download, so I was like frantically messaging people, to send me, you have it, and finally somebody sent it to me. And one thing that is interesting is I think that it was down the whole rest of the evening after maybe being up for 20 minutes or so because of the server activity. And also, they didn't redact a bunch of the names like they had said they were going to do.
Oh, yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
got the original set, and it has the names of the children witnesses,
Yes.
and, all the witnesses, and a lot of people that then the next day they struck a lot of that out of there. So,
Yeah.
it seems like a catastrophic mistake. But.
Yeah, and I actually, hello, Kitty. I know I was at work because I was off Monday and Tuesday, and I was waiting, and then I really thought they weren't coming out till next week, and I was just started my heavy work week on Wednesday. They dropped. Same thing. I couldn't get them to download, and then I don't know if the server crashed or what was going on with that, but I screenshotted. I screenshotted some other people's while they were having the documents up, so I have those names too, but I don't have the original forms. I was able to download them yesterday, but I noticed that they had been redacted. So, yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I'm most likely not going to talk about the witnesses at the moment. But yeah, doesn't it always happen when when you're busy? That's
Right.
when everything happens. I'm like, thank you, great. Was there anything that you found shocking in that?
Well, I found a lot of it interesting. The majority of the 112 documents are not interesting, but there's, maybe 10 that have, some real substance to them. Of course, what stood out to me and probably most people was that the confessions were to his wife and to his mother on jailhouse phones and devices. And McClelland actually mentions that they may have actually have this on video as well. So that sounds like stuff that will be most likely allowed in court, pending an insanity plea, something like that.
Yeah, I have so many mixed thoughts, and as we go through, I know there were things that you wanted to talk about. Actually, there were things that we agreed,
Yep.
on,
Yep.
and I think it gave me more. Some things I found quite surprising. Most of it, not really. I think I was more interested to see, the PCA, the search
Mhm.
warrant, that
Right.
kind of stuff. Um, but I mean, go ahead. I told you kind of what I'm more interested in. Yes, the confession, um, the conditions, and then there was another page in there I found very interesting about ballistics. And but you start. I mean, you start. You're the guest. Tell me the first thing that I guess is on your mind about that.
Well, I'm going to flip over here to, you know, a few things. Yeah, the wife, the confession is the first thing that's such a big deal here. That's going to be
Mm-hmm.
very hard to walk back. And also that it seems that his mental health declined after making that confession. And that's also the same time that uh, the defense lawyers began trying to move him for his own safekeeping. Um, and so that's an interesting timeline with that. There are tests that can be administered to prove insanity, or that are standardly used in insanity pleas, and we don't even know they're going to go to that, but
Mm-hmm.
because it seems to be in the general discussion, um, we'll see, what happens here. I think that what would cause them to try to get a plea would be if this
Kitty,
evidence,
kitty.
if the evidence does not get thrown out. I'm going to try to throw Miss Zulu out here.
Oh no, she's cute. I look. I think it's great. I'm not in the right angle for you to see, but my cat Sachi was just posing and doing all kind of stuff
Yeah.
last time we were live. Here, let me move
I have to
myself
let her
over.
come up here, or she'll have a fit. So it's like, you gotta make sure. My God,
Now, what's her name?
this is Zulu. These are the
Zulu.
dogs. Yeah, named
Hi,
after
Zulu.
one of the. I can't move it that way. I can't move. All right, that's probably as good as we're
Hey,
getting.
kitty, kitty. You're
Um,
pretty. Okay.
so one of the things that ties in with his mental health condition, we learned that he was evaluated by two psychiatrists and one psychologist, and they all found that it was not necessary for him uh, to be put on medication against his will. So this is actually kind of interesting, for the reason that when I was at the hearing and they brought him into court, he appeared very psychotic, or trying to appear that way.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that's what I've heard from you and multiple
yeah,
people.
and you can just see it in the pictures that are in the media, which were taken of him as he's being led into the courtroom. Um, and the thought that went through my mind was, you know, they would have him on medication if he were having these symptoms. So I was
Hmm.
suspicious of that, because we have great medications for psychosis nowadays that, will tend to, not medicate, over medicate people that much, and that can get those symptoms, they have to be real symptoms, under control. But now what we're learning is most likely he's not on any medication because he didn't want to be on it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, that would not have been stated like that. No need for mandated medication against his will. So that's interesting, I think.
Yeah, there are several, and okay, first of all, I think, like I said last time, it's a brilliant defense, okay, to go, mental health issues. However, there are some other things that I think I'll bring up a little bit later, um, that I have to wonder, is he or isn't he? But yeah, there's a paper, and I'll pull it up in a few minutes, that says this is what bothered me. In one of the many, many pages, it said something about after, he had his breakdown, basically, he went and he started eating again, and they said he started acting like he was before. But obviously, at the hearing, no, he wasn't the same person that went in the jail. So, um, that was like, okay, that's not true. Obviously, I mean, you can see how much different he is. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know, but
And
I that's in there somewhere.
yeah, well, and evidently, he comes in and out of these things for at least, the description of the jail staff. The warden had stated that in the hearing when he was on the witness stand, that he himself had had a coherent conversation with Richard Allen as recently as the day before the hearing. So we just don't know. We're not there. McClellan, has argued for release of uh, video showing, you know, his behavior, so that
Yeah,
means that they seem to think um, that he does at times not appear psychotic, but we don't know. We won't know for a while. Yeah.
right. Kelt had a question here. I'm trying to get like some kind of angle on here that's not crazy. Kelt said, did it say the doctor decided no meds were necessary, or that meds were deemed necessary and RA refused to take them? That is, that wasn't specified.
Yeah,
We don't
I think it
know.
was. I mean, what it said was that you got. I'm just reading between the lines on it. That
Mm-hmm.
what the three mental health professionals, again, two psychiatrists, one psychologist. The psychiatrists have prescriptive authority. They said that it was not necessary to put him on medication that uh, that he did not want to be on. So
Yeah,
so to me, that's saying he's not medicated, unless maybe he said I'll take this and not that. So
right. And
that's a possibility. But it seemed like there is some degree of um, him being deemed competent and not a danger to himself. That
right.
whereas like a person who is starving themselves, and what happened is they said he had been staying up and he hadn't been sleeping, keeping himself awake and refusing to eat, and those kind of things can constitute a danger to yourself. And so if he had continued that, they could have used that as rationale to put him on medication that he did not want to be on. But
Yeah.
that's how I'm hearing it. Yeah.
But have you seen, and I know I've seen this a lot in jail, uh, we have some we have some inmates that so very desperately need antipsychotics, anti everything, like they're out there. But they cycle through, and I'm pretty sure you probably see the same thing. They cycle through, not like they'll take their meds, then they don't want to take their meds. They decide, they talk to the psychiatrist or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, and then 2 weeks later they decide, I don't need this.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you have
You start
to,
feeling better and they think they don't need it. Right. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like,
Mhm.
did did RA say, well, I don't need this? Because again, when you're in that state of whether it's psychosis or whether it's depression. Um, sometimes they don't take their meds, and so the doctor will say, okay, well, yeah, I guess you don't need them, or they justify it, but you can't make somebody, and that could very well be his decision. I don't want to. Not that he doesn't need to, but he doesn't want to. I'm trying to adjust this a little bit because I can't get centered in here. There was another, Rose says, also found out he suffered from depression from an early age. Yes, that is in the paperwork. So I would think that he would need to be on something now, whether, I don't know if he's bipolar or just depressed. They said schizophrenia. I heard that.
Well, I think we've kind of ruled schizophrenia out because that's an early onset disease. That usually hits you when you're about, somewhere between 18 and, 23 or 24 years of age. For someone to all of a sudden start having these episodes like in your 50s it's unheard of. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be psychotic. It doesn't. He could be bipolar. He could. The medications are all very different for these different illnesses. For depression, of course, there's a ton of antidepressants, that he could be put on and may be on, but that's not going to show as much in these type of wild-eyed paranoid starings, eating the paper, that type of stuff that we're seeing with him, per his own lawyers, that he's out of touch with reality, that they can't discuss the case with him, those kind of things. That's not typical depressive symptoms,
No, it's not of depression. And can y'all, I just for a second, Big Fish said, I can't hear him that well. So I hear you really well, but
yeah. What can I do on that?
I don't know. I think it's just what's coming.
Or I wonder if there's somewhere on my microphone. I can project pretty loudly. Is that any better if I talk louder?
I'm trying to. Yeah, I don't know.
I hate that when you can't hear people. I'm going to move this closer to me. Maybe that'll help.
Maybe that will. I hear you just fine, but
yeah. All right, let's try this.
Okay. Now, okay. Okay, yeah, Justice said that too. There. All right, he moved his mic closer. I'm sorry. All this moaning in the background is my dog just whining.
That's a dog?
Yeah, I've got a dog over here and a cat somewhere over there. Okay. Now, what I wanted to say about what I see in the jails, and when I got those documents, I printed out probably 20 pages of things that I looked at, and I would highlight them,
right.
and things that really stuck out to me. That was one of them, of the eating paper. Now, I know that sounds, and one of the rebuttal against the defense, it's like they use the term, they're using dramatics. And I know that sounds weird. Okay. Yeah. Well, he ate his papers. That sounds like a bunch of hooey, but I want to tell you, I see this in the jail. I don't know what it is. But in the jail this is very common on their descent into psychosis, especially when, and this is when, I know y'all have heard me talk numerous times about what I call turtle suits. And that's the, the green things that you wear when you're in the unaliving yourself. And when you are in, I can't say that word, where you are in that kind of lockup, you only wear the turtle suit. You cannot have your underwear. You cannot have your socks. That's so cute. You cannot. They always do that when you're live. I know. You can't have paper. Like, literally, when I tell you, people, that they will use any possible thing to unalive themselves.
Yeah.
They are so creative. And I have seen people literally eat their papers, their booking sheets, whatever. That's not abnormal for someone incarcerated who is going into psychosis. Okay. Now, what is he doing that? Is that real or is that an act? I honestly, I would have. This is just my opinion. Um, Normally, if you are acting, you're not eating paper, but it's so common. I would have to say there may have been a really bad patch where he did that. I mean, we're not going to know because we
I also
weren't
thought it was
there.
somewhat symbolic. I mean, I'm probably overthinking that, but trying to destroy this case against him, trying instead of ripping it up, making
Yeah.
it disappear,
But,
you know.
And I think since this came out, I've looked at a lot of things that I said were normal, probably aren't. And so I have to backtrack on that for some of the conditions that he's in based on or compared to what I know the status is. But, is he involved? I don't know. Is he, attorneys do these grand dances, right? Oh my gosh. If it's not one thing, it's another, isn't it? But what is the question up there? I've got to see if I can get my light back on.
Kelt is asking, in a court of law, how does one prove insanity? Is it a battle of experts?
Well, I mean, you have the what is the book, Tony? I can't think. It's not the DSM. It's the that's the diagnostic.
Right.
It's the other one. There.
I don't know.
Why can't I think of it?
The DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistician's Manual, is what's used to diagnose.
Okay, yeah, and there's one just for mental. Like the DSM is like it's everything, but there is one that is just for, and we used to use it all the time, but there's one that's just for mental health issues. I can't remember what that's called. So, that's going to be on the psychiatrist. And I'll just tell you, he could have great psychiatrists. They could be crap, but I would hope that he would get more than one opinion. And they have guidelines.
We don't know if the professionals that have seen him at this point, whether those were, people that just worked for the facility, or hired by the facility, or if they were brought in by his lawyers. My guess would be by the facility. If they do want to say that he is incompetent to stand trial, that's one thing. To say that he is guilty because he's insane is another, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
I think those are the two things we're talking about here, because they could say, they'd have to battle it out, before the trial to say he just can't even stand trial because he's mentally incompetent, and and then if they're going to say he did this, but he's insane, then that would be in the courtroom with the actual trial, I believe. But
right,
I'm no expert on that for sure.
Well, I mean, it really kind of is two things. I mean, taking his guilt off the table. Okay. We're not even talking about that. Right. Is he legit insane? Is he having real psychosis? Is, all that, or is this a ploy? You have to be able to determine that before you ever get into court. Right. And, sorry. But, let's see. There was another question on here. That one screen door says, is paper eating a sign of going into psychosis or a sign of determination of suicide? I mean, it's not a determination necessarily of suicide, in my opinion. I'm sorry, Tony, you can answer that too. definitely psychosis.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say it would be more of a psychotic feature for sure. I don't think
I
it could be
mean,
predicted to suicidal.
yeah, I mean, because some people who want to unalive themselves know exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to, like Kelt said earlier, yeah, stuff their, esophagus or their bowels, whatever, with stuff they have to go to the hospital, or they want to. And like I said, a couple of broadcasts ago, I had a woman that they let her have her underwear on. She wasn't. She was
Mhm.
more psychotic. She wasn't trying to harm herself, but in showing her that kindness, she took her underwear and stuffed them down her throat.
Mhm.
So she was psychotic. But
Mm.
will people do stuff like that just to, do away with themselves, or, maybe get sent to ER? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
See it all the time.
We had a patient at one of the places I worked at who was on 1-to-1 suicide watch. So they had somebody 24/7 sitting right next to the guy, and he didn't have anything. And he took a couple pieces of Kleenex and stuffed them in his nose and down his throat, and so with when somehow without them noticing it, and turned over and went to sleep forever.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, it's when somebody really wants to do it, they're you have to be extremely, vigilant in how you're monitoring them. But that
Yeah.
person wasn't psychotic. That person was just didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. You can't trust them with anything ever. Can't take your eyes off of them.
Mm, right.
Um, Uh, and this question is: the woman who had postpartum and sought treatment repeatedly and unalived her children, would that be psychosis? I don't know. What do you think,
Well,
Tony?
I know there've been these cases always, make big headlines because they're so shocking. But postpartum depression is really a big deal. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because people have these horrible thoughts about their children and delusions and things, and it has to be taken seriously. It has to be screened for. And yeah, I think the majority of them were in a psychotic state that do things like that. The majority of them.
Um. Okay, and this is one of the things I may bring up another screen just as to thank you, by the way, for modding for me and just being great. We have to do another show soon. Okay, they took him off suicide watch, participating in recreation, crossword puzzles, off of, oh, I shouldn't have said that word, watch. And then he tells his wife, just because he
Tells
told
you,
his wife and mother doesn't make him insane. No, it doesn't.
right?
Um, but let me, and I was gonna, I don't know, we'll probably go back and forth to papers. And I'll tell you what, Tony, uh, the truth of the matter is, these documents, this is one of the things that kept me later, because these would not upload to my computer. But there's this one thing. This was in the inmate's letter. Yeah, because there are so many things in here. Um, you go ahead first, and you tell me what you. Wait, let me see. I'm gonna have to. I'm trying to add you over here. I think because you didn't come in. That's what it is. Because you didn't come in the regular way. Uh, the email didn't work. This happened with CJ too. I don't know what the heck. But let me put you down here. Okay. Yeah, this is okay. This is what I was. This is what really caught my attention. Okay, I do know. Where did you go, Tony?
I didn't do anything. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello.
Where? No, 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 no. Okay. I don't know what, like, look, this is wildin' tonight. I don't know. You're just everywhere. There we go.
Are we good?
Well, you keep moving every time I put you
I'm not
somewhere.
doing anything.
I don't know.
Mm.
I don't know. All right. But here's the thing. When I was reading this, like, okay, first of all, let me say absolutely people in the jail and prison, they are criminals, okay? And they act like criminals. Um, I have a lot of problems with confessions for that reason, but are they always trying to get a maybe a better deal or you know, have a lawsuit? Yes, so that is a real thing. But when I was reading this, I did get disturbed because it says he talks about Mr. Baston talks about there are corrupt officers and what is that? Ranking
Ranking.
officers
Yep.
calling Richard Allen a kid unaliver, teasing him that he has a visit from his family. Phone is ringing on his tablet. Inmates in cells, and he gives the cells and the names: Logan Osborne, inmate Riley, inmate in cell A2-204 and A2-A05 205. Yeah, that's what it is. Sorry, threatening to unalive Richard Allen and telling him to unalive himself. And these inmates have made, you know, these comments in front of Warden John Gallipo, ranking officers, and others. Okay, here is my problem with this is, first of all, uh, in the situation, we know that he is with a partner, kind of what would they call a companion, and there are other people. For instance, in our medical ISO, where we had a someone on trial for capital murder and the unaliving of a child just a few months ago. He was being housed at DOC, and then for the trial, he came back to our uh, county jail, and we couldn't house him. Not because we were unable to, but we sent him to DOC because the crime that he committed was literally like a few blocks away from the courthouse, okay, and the jail. So it was extremely dangerous for him to be, even though we're capable. But while he was there for trial, you know, and you have like, I was measuring this room today, and I imagine that he has something similar to this. You have an outer area that looked like it's probably about 8 feet by maybe 13 feet. There are 4 people in there on mats on the floor. There's a TV. It's kind of like a day room, sort of, but it's small. Then you have 2 isolation cells behind bars or behind doors. They have their bean holes open where they can, you know, hear and see. They can see, they've got a window, they can see the TV. But, and they do have someone in the cell with them, so they're not alone. Again, they're in the unaliving or, you know, isolation for some reason, or protective custody. Now, can those people, first of all, you've got the roommate that can say whatever they want to you. Do you have other inmates that have access and can talk to you and call you all kinds of names and suggest to you, you know, all kind of things? Yes, when I said before there are 100 ways to make somebody's life absolutely miserable in jail and still fall within the guidelines, I'm not kidding. So, and look, I'm sure this happened with the guy that I was talking about that we were housing. Same thing. You know, he was a child unaliver. It was horrific. And, you know, even though we tried to make sure he was okay, I am absolutely sure that the other people in that block or in that small area said exactly what they felt and what they wanted to. You know, does that make sense? Go ahead, Tony. I'm
Right.
just
Yeah. So there's a couple things about Robert Baston. Um, Onion and Kevin on Murder Sheet gathered quite a bit of research on him. And because Kevin is an attorney, he has a higher level of access to the My Case filings than just the public does. They have to pay a subscription, but they're able to see more details about somebody's charges
Mm-hmm.
and things that pertain to them legally. All right, so they're able to get a lot of good stuff here. This man, first of all, is convicted for a horrible molestation of a 6-year-old. That doesn't mean what he's saying,
Right,
is
right.
not true. He has also made dozens of complaints
Mm-hmm.
soliciting the court, trying to be released from jail, suing the facility because they lost his property. Many facetious claims. Tried to get them to release him from his sentence because of so he could go out and fight COVID. Just this guy. So I think that's fair that we note that about him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that doesn't mean he's not telling the truth here. No, it doesn't mean that. But it's part of his credibility. The next thing I'm going to say is, probably the most disturbing piece of what he says, if indeed all that is true, is that the staff there are participating in calling Richard Allen kid killer and things, et cetera, and so on.
Right.
And he says, oh, they've said these things, go kill yourself, kid killer, right in front of the warden, and he didn't do anything about it. What is he supposed to do about it? This is an incredibly harsh environment where they're already in the most restrictive setting. It's not like they can go, move him somewhere else. Anywhere he goes, especially like if he goes to Cass County Jail, where he's going to have more interaction with people, they're going to do that to him there too. They're going to say,
Oh yeah.
They're going to tell him to kill himself. They're going to say horrible things. He's going to be at a higher risk for being, injured there. So that's, really, sort of the harsh reality of the majority of that. Now, I'm trying to think what else was in that. That's like a 2-page letter that he wrote, Robert Guest and Aston.
Yeah, everything, and not to downplay, but that's the thing. When it comes to inmates, let me just tell you, they are notoriously liars. They just are. And they're always looking to. So on one hand, it's easy for me to say, yeah, well, an inmate said this and that. Is it true? I don't know. But it doesn't make it any less true.
Right.
Just because it came from an inmate
Right.
either. That's the thing.
Right.
You don't know. And that's going to be. So I think that's why I had pulled one of those papers just to look at some of the details that they gave to that were red flags for me. Yes, I did say beanhole. that is yes, Professor Pug, forever conning. The beanhole is like, where you put the tray, like the trays in for meals. That beanhole can be locked or it can be open. It depends on how the person's acting, and what's going on with them. Certainly, it can. Certainly, there are times that you can't because the inmate is, throwing things out there. Whatever, it depends on what's going on. Let me go back to this though. Let me get Kelt off there. Hold on just a second, because it looks like the way it looks, Tony, it looks like you're sitting next to a dog. There we go. There's Tony. Don't you love technology? All right, let me go back to these documents because I had to upload them twice, and let me just see. Now, let me just say this too. Uh, they were talking about the fact that he was, and I think several people said he was videotaped, but there was no sound. But something was up because they did have this order. Look, my stuff just moves. I don't know why. That said that they granted that order that he could not be videotaped during attorney. Did you see that, Tony, during
Yeah.
attorney visits?
Yes.
So
They agreed with that. All right.
yeah. So obviously, which I think, okay, if you want to get down into what they're going to do and what they're going to say in court, I think they're going to play that one. Well, I think also a good defense is also looking for a good reason to have a mistrial,
Mhm.
because that's their job. It doesn't make them bad people. That's their job. But here are the things that really bothered me. Let's see. I wanted to get more into the conditions. There were some things, let me find them, that just were horrific to me. If y'all can see that, y'all can see it better than I can. All right, yeah, this statement, let me make this bigger so I can read it. I've got it on paper, but okay, where this is some of the complaints. To the best of the council's knowledge, Westville Correctional Facility does not routinely house offenders awaiting trial who are presumed innocent, as the presumption should be with Mr. Allen. Of course, that's true. We should presume. We never do, though, do we? I mean, we really don't. When it's just a thing. When somebody gets arrested, we assume that they're guilty. But anyway, he has been continuously assigned.
Where'd you go, Lily?
Blank for y'all? Okay.
There you are.
All right. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. Assigned a separate maximum security segregation unit within the Westville Correctional Facility, wherein the most dangerous offenders are held. Okay, this to me is a problem, because if you're talking about the most dangerous offenders, again, most people in that facility are already sentenced. They're convicted, they're sentenced. This is where they're at. Richard Allen, being presumed innocent, whether he is or not, he is in this facility in a wing segregated with the most violent. Now, the thing about that is that the worst and most dangerous, they have nothing to lose, okay? They don't care. They have nothing to lose, and it's fun mind games. Look, people like this, a lot of inmates are incredibly cruel. And so, putting him in a place in a wing like this, to me, did not seem that did not seem like it was okay, because of the nature of the people. I mean, it's not like he's in there with people who write bad checks. There's a huge difference in what you're around. It says, who have committed some of the most heinous crimes known to our society, or who have been transferred to this unit after committing further crimes within the DOC. Council was informed by prison employees that said employees were not aware of any other circumstance wherein a human facing trial under circumstances such as these has been housed in said facility. Okay, do you see, where I'm going with this? You've got people you've got the worst of people, and they've often been placed there because they committed a heinous crime after they were sentenced. Okay, these are not people that did this on the outside. They have, maybe unalived somebody, done heinous things to somebody in the prison. So I read that and I was like, yeah, that is not okay. I mean, what are your thoughts, Tony?
Well, I mean, I guess when I'm listening to you talk, what I would question in his placement there is, would there be another unit there that might, have a little more hospitable conditions that he could be housed on? Now, I understand why they put him there. I get
Yes, I do too.
that for the safekeeping, that there's just is not a county jail that is going to be able to provide all the things that a Department of Corrections facility is going to
True.
be able to do. As far as out of the 200 some people that are housed there, is there another wing or ward that he could be on and kept in solitary confinement? I don't know. I think it's a good question.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
kind of what I was thinking.
yeah. I mean, I guess that other than him being in the, that they seem to be able to yell things at him, or the companion idea, which I think was a terrible idea. I said that last week. The having other inmates supervise him is ridiculous. Really, and to supervise anybody seems ridiculous. But they, so I don't know. I mean, I think that's a valid point. It's a good question. So
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's the thing is, I've talked many, many times about, yes, I understand why they put him there. This is a good question that Indy Pam brought up. She says, listen, I've got friends in low places. A couple people say that the warden is evil. He lets the COs beat the inmates and much more. Have you checked into Westville's past record? Yes, some. After I made my first video on this months ago, and somebody was like, you don't know what you're talking about, I did look at Westville. Certainly, yes, these things, unfortunately, they happen. And Westville has been notoriously bad. So what have you heard about it, Tony?
Well, what I heard when I was in court, Rozzy, the defense attorney, thoroughly cross-examined the warden about things that he was quoting, that all these terrible things that had happened there, and the warden said over and over, and not that I'm aware of, not on my watch, not in the 4 years I've been there. Those were the kind of responses that he gave.
Mm-hmm.
And Rozzy really didn't like bring up a paper and put it in front of him and say, see, which he did with some other things, so I don't know. But obviously we don't know. I do not know, to answer the listener. I have not researched that, but they denied it. He pretty much denied those type of things when he was in court.
Well, what are you going to say if you're the warden? Well, yeah, we beat our prisoners on a daily basis.
Well,
I mean, what you going to say?
That they were basically, he was asking him things about that they had been sued for poor treatment of prisoners and things like that, and that they had been in violation of different statutes, et cetera, and so on. And he said that he was not aware of any of that.
I'm gonna have to call BS. Okay, I'm gonna have to call BS on he's not aware of it, because how can you not be aware of it when you can Google it? Now, that being said, inmates notoriously, again, make lawsuits, for little tiny reasons that are not valid. For instance, this happens I promise you, all the time. I have an inmate that is jumping up and down saying, I'm sick, I need an antibiotic, I've got this abscess, I've got whatever. And, they're screaming and yelling, and you're like, okay, cool, we'll put you on an antibiotic. And then after you go through all this stuff, you get the doctor's order, you do everything, then they won't get up and take the medicine. And they verbally say, I don't want it. They don't get up. The condition worsens. Okay. Then they want to give you a lawsuit. In the meantime, they're calling their family or texting their family saying they're not treating me. And you're like, geez, we can't force it down your throat.
Right.
And so you have caused this condition. So, are there lots of complaints for things that the inmates have done that brought this situation about? Absolutely. Absolutely there is. But by the same token, is there abuse and abuse of power? And do people, physically harm inmates? It's also equally possible, And that's why, you have to, you have to weigh all things. But like I said, you have to take all things, and it's not, again, this isn't a trial of whether Richard Allen is innocent or guilty. That's not it. It's like, how is he being treated? Is it fair? Because even, I would argue this, and I do a whole lot, even though some people don't like it. Does a convicted person, no matter how heinous the crime, do they deserve health care? I believe they do. It's hard. It's hard for me sometimes. It's like, yeah. You have to remember that, but they are people. So,
absolutely.
And, I sometimes have to remind myself of that, but, I would fight that they have the right to decent treatment. I mean, is prison good? Is it fun? No, not at all. Okay.
I think this has been an eye opener for many of us, just to hear what it's really like or possibly like in these facilities.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And, okay, the question is, can you explain the companion program? You know what? I don't know how theirs works. I know how ours works. They don't go into solitary. There is no, I mean, I know in prison they have the place called the Hole, and I know there is such a thing as solitary confinement, but that is a disciplinary measure. That is not for people who want to unalive themselves, okay? It's major disciplinary, and that is a DOC thing. That's not something that we do at our jail. People who are in isolation or in what we call PC or protective custody, it's because either they've done something so heinous they're not safe, but usually that's not it. Usually it's because they have made a gigantic horse's rear end out of themselves, and the blocks keep throwing them out, and they have this situation where they say they're going to put somebody on the door. And what they mean is, literally, when you have driven the whole block crazy and they all want to hurt you, they will gather up all your stuff and move you out of your bunk or wherever you're at. And they literally put all of your possessions, your commissary, whatever, at the door and bang on the door for the officers. And like, we're putting him on the door. So you either get him out or we're going to have our way with him, And so when you have somebody who has, become in that situation, you have to put them in what's called protective custody, and they go behind a door. But they don't go by themselves. There is always at least one other inmate in PC with them. Usually they're stacked up so they can talk in between cells. But yeah, even our people in what I call our padded room, it literally is padded. everywhere, they're not in there by themselves because solitary is a punishment, you know.
My
So that's
understanding of what the companion program involved at Westville with Richard Allen was that they were using an inmate to watch him for suicidal behavior. And the person was not supposed to speak to him, but basically was like 2 feet outside of the door looking
hmm
out, looking at him. That
right.
they were
Not
using
supposed
him. They
to.
were using him as a using other inmates as a staff that were supposed to monitor him. And Rozzy, the defense lawyer, brought up with various prison staff that were called to testify that day. Uh, are these people allowed to speak to uh, Richard Allen? And the answer was no, they're not supposed to. And then it would go to questioning, well, are you certain that never happens? And they're like, well, we know we're not certain that doesn't ever happen. So reading between the lines, I think they were suggesting that these other inmates were saying bad things to him. You know,
You know,
um,
like, yeah. Um, it depends on, the caliber of person, but again, we're talking about, in DOC, we're talking about career criminals. So, I mean, does it happen? Yes, I would say most likely it's going to happen more than not. Is it supposed to? No, but yeah.
it just seems to me like a very shady practice. To have
Oh
another
yeah,
inmate supervise another inmate. I mean,
yes,
especially in this case, this prisoner. I
right.
mean, I could see maybe doing it with some other low level kind of things, but this guy, it seems outrageous.
It does to me too, and again because he's not convicted, and I mean just think about it. I mean you think about how uh and I want to come back to your question, Lisa, but you think about how people do uh brainwashing. Okay, I mean, have you ever seen these things where they will literally put somebody in solitary or in a confined space, and they say the same thing over and over and over? They have it on a recording, whatever, and they say these phrases to you so many times, and the same ideas over and over, that when people get out of this confinement, they actually believe whatever they were brainwashed. Okay, so if you're going to take that, I'm not saying it did happen, but I'm saying it could happen. All right. If Richard Allen was in a situation where his companions or even the people coming and going, like, what if they were sitting there drilling that into his head? I know you did it. I know you did it. Tell me how you did it, Richard. Tell me how you did it. You unalived those girls. Why did you do it? We all know you're guilty. You know you're guilty. If you hear that enough, okay? If you hear that enough and you have a mental issue, it is my opinion that you could potentially, again, not saying he did, but I believe that you could bend somebody's thinking to, to a brainwashing. Is it possible? I think so. What do you think, Tony?
Oh, I don't know that I could agree with that. I don't think that you have an environment there that it would be that continual and pervasive. Um, I think it's very possible that some of these guys said that stuff to him, but I don't think it's like going on all day and all night. We haven't heard anything to that
No,
at
there is
all in
nothing
the
to say
courtroom.
that. Yeah.
And I think he would have, before he lost it, he would have complained to that to his attorneys. He would have said, "Hey, they're sitting here saying this to me 24/7." We haven't heard anything about that. So
Yeah. Now, I mean, okay, let me answer this, or you can. Alan's sudden downward shift occurred after he received good news from his counsel. Then he began talking. I wonder what he learned and who he is afraid of protecting. Okay, this is exactly, and this is, I know, this is on another tangent. But when I looked at those papers, Tony, and I looked at the dates, which the dates are wrong. It says April 20. Yeah, it says April 26th, and then April 4th or something. I think they meant March to April. Anyway, but they later say in there, it was a typo, I think. They later say it was 10 days. Literally, that's the complaint from the attorneys. From the time that they gave him good news and they said he was coherent and he was happy and everything was good, 10 days later is when he was in this state. Okay, even as somebody who watches people deteriorate, especially over time, as some of my patients do when they realize that they're not going to get out of the charges. I've got, a girl right now, the same situation. When she was positive until about 6, 7, 8 months in, when she realized she was not most likely going to get out of capital murder charges.
Mm-hmm.
Then she started becoming a different person, and
Mm-hmm.
she was very depressed, very listless. But even in these situations, they don't do it in 10 days. This is where I have the hang up. 10 days is a huge nosedive, and I don't understand why.
So to add to that timeline, as we understand it, the two things that precipitated his unusual behavior were, one, the confession to the wife, and two, that he was served up paperwork that included discovery that was provided to him by his lawyers. So basically, the case against him. So those things are a little bit closer to where the psychotic or unusual behavior occurred. I believe his attorneys were saying, well, we saw him, 10 days before this, we delivered him good news about the case. And see, that's another thing that's, they're trying to slip that in, oh, we've got good news about the case, and he seemed enthusiastic about that. And then, 10 days later, he's a whole different person.
Right.
But that's how I understood the timeline with this.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I have such a, if you got good news, and then he confesses, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But let me play devil's advocate here, okay? Because I'm going to give him the same grace that I give the Patties and the Germans and the Williams and everything else, because, inconsistencies in stories, and I know that people have, really had a field day with that. And I have always said, I'm not going to say a whole lot about the family because I don't know their motive. Yes. Are they inconsistent? Yes. Is there problems? Yes. But I don't know. If they do know something and they're not talking, is it because they're afraid? I'm going to give that same grace to Richard Allen and say, in there, okay, first of all, major, let me back up to Atlanta just got busted not long ago with, the cartels were running, like the kingpins, the top people were running the business from inside. Like, they were convicted inmates in Atlanta prisons running the whole operation. So, and it even happens on a much smaller level in my jail. Like, the people in there, I'm like, why would you listen to somebody? Because they have that much power on the outside. So they're still important. So playing devil's advocate and affording him that, what if he decided to confess because they told him, we know where your wife is, we know where your daughter is. Either you confess to this, or, the same thing is going to happen to them as Abby and Libby. Is it a real possibility that if he were innocent, somebody could, threaten him to the point that he just says, okay, I'll do anything, let me take the rap? What do you think about the possibilities of that?
Well, again, I just don't have any information that indicates that's happened. I mean, I think I could come up with I mean, endless speculation about what ifs. I think there would be, if that were me and someone were threatening me or saying things like that to me, and I was afraid for my wife and daughter, I would try to find some way of communicating that to my attorneys or to somebody who would listen. I think I would do that. And keep in mind, he's taken, he's evidently, he says he's not saying, he hasn't thrown in the towel. He hasn't said I'm confessing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just he's made at least 5 confessions, and the confessions were to his wife and his mother, not to authorities, which would seem to
Right.
be like if these inmates were threatening him that he better confess, he would confess to the correct people, or they would carry out, their threat, right? But
Right.
they didn't say confess to your wife. They would be saying, confess up to this or else. That's just my
Yeah.
opinion. But I
Well,
just it's hard for me without having information about that to go down those
yeah. You're
those.
absolutely right. I mean, you've got a good point. It was too well. What I read was his wife and mother and like 4 or 5 other people. So I mean, again, I have to question his motivation. But you're right. We don't have any information. We don't have any facts. We don't know if that's true or not. It was just a hypothetical. Why would somebody? Um, this was an interesting story that I can't remember. One of y'all lovely people sent me down a rabbit hole about false confessions. And there was this guy that literally, he wasn't guilty, okay, but he started having dreams that he had unalived this child, and the child was missing, still missing. And after having, lots of dreams, and he was in the vicinity, and the child has not been found, and
Mhm.
he began to believe that his dreams were telling him that he had actually done this, and like, just erased it from his, memory because he couldn't handle it. As it turns out, he didn't do it. You know, he didn't. It was absolutely, but he went and he confessed and truly believed that he had committed that crime. It was a very fascinating story, and it shows, I guess, how the psyche can really mess with you sometimes. Um, and jailhouse confessions to me are not necessarily, whatever.
Well, I think again, like when we heard in court that that he had confessed, we didn't know to who, and
Hmm.
we thought, and certainly if some inmate said, oh yeah, he confessed to me, or somebody that was not a reliable source, but to have
Right.
him recorded saying this to his wife and mother, that's to me a big deal. Here's a question that's just to shift gears just a little bit. Does anybody know what's Rick Allen's daughter's name? Does anybody know that? Her current married name?
Oh,
Anybody? Maybe just put it in the chat.
yeah. At one time I
We
knew.
can go on to something else until it does, it
Um,
does make it about.
yeah, I mean, and Kelt had said we need to hear and read the transcript of the phone calls, with his
Yeah,
mom and wife. And I agree because
right.
uh, did he say his confession? Okay, what did that consist of? Did he say something like, "I've got to get this off my chest. I absolutely did it. Here's some details that nobody knows, can you ever
Right.
forgive me?" Or did he say something like, um, uh, oh, I lost my train of thought. Did he say something like, I might have
What's
done
the
it?
context of
Yeah. Yeah. What's the
how he admits this
context?
to the wife and the mother? Did it make
Right.
sense? Was it clear? Yeah, of course we want to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of disappointed that they didn't have that. Uh, that was one of the first things, of course, news media was reporting on. So I thought they were actually going to have the transcript, in some of these documents. I kept clicking through them, and hoping that it would be in there, and of course it wasn't. But um, Yeah. So we will. A lot more will be revealed at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that's one of those things that you don't know. You're just guessing,
Right.
supposing until you find. And it's,
Right.
the defense, do they absolutely need to play up this? Yeah. uh if they're going to be good at their job. I guess my question is, though, is if he really confessed, um and why wouldn't they just go ahead and let him plea? Because it's, especially if somebody is in that kind of mental distress, you know it's
Well,
cruel.
yeah. I think that the issue is just like he probably has not confessed to his attorneys, so they're gonna continue the battle because that's what if he's saying yes I did it like 5 or 6 times and then all the rest of the time he's saying no I didn't or I don't know what you're talking about, then it's an inconsistency. You know, it's one more thing they have to deal with. It's a certainly a wrench in the wheel that they uh, certainly didn't want to deal with. Ruckus has a question here.
Yeah. Is there a vestibule area where you see, uh I don't know what you mean by CM. I don't know, we might call it something else,
Child
but
molester,
yes.
maybe? I don't know.
It what?
I don't know what it means, child molester or what. Yeah,
Oh,
clarify, Ruckus.
is that, yeah, I don't know if you're talking about the crime or the status in the jail. Yes. Yes, there is. Um that vestibule, the way ours is you, well, it depends, they're kind of all over the place. If they're not in any danger, we put them all in the same block, because chances are they're not gonna hurt each other when they're guilty of the same crimes. In the we have different places in booking. Um, as Ruckus was a booking officer for, I think he said 10 years. So, I mean, you know how that is. But we do have, for our people in PC and ISO, one of the places that we put them, it does have a vestibule. It's locked from other people, but we can see. And in that vestibule area, we have people sleeping on the floor there too. So it's not just a companion. And for us, if he was housed with us, it wouldn't just be somebody else in the cell with him, but there are other people in that vestibule area. If you're overcrowded, as most jails are, um, you know, is that what you were talking about, Ruckus? Because I'm not sure. Um, there was a
Well,
few things.
one thing that kind of relates to this, someone had said last week on one of the listeners that they didn't have Kagan Klein. Kagan Klein had a roommate. He
Mm-hmm.
wasn't put into anything like Richard Allen's been put into. I think that the difference is that Kagan was never charged with Abby and Libby, and the numbers of people in this state that have been charged as child molesters and the like, it's astronomical. It's something like 15,000 registered sex offenders in this
Mm-hmm.
state. And every one of those people spent time in a jail or a correctional facility. And they can't put all those guys in solitary confinement, you know? So I think the difference between Kagan and they probably did gauge like who they put in with Kagan. They probably we certainly did that when we had um, when I worked with residential teenagers in treatment
Mm-hmm.
centers that they would put. We always looked at the compatibility of and the dangers of like if you put a great big kid in with a little kid and things like that, or a really volatile kid, we might try to keep him in a room
Yeah.
by himself. So we would always try to look at those things, and I would think that like um, the one fellow that's been on numerous YouTubes. I mean, he may have been deemed less of a likely to harm Kagan, than maybe some other roommates. Close management is the CM.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, if you're asking about medical, yes. Yes, we go into of course if you're talking about that, I'm not sure. It sounds like we have a little bit of difference. Do you have an area to see inmates vestibule, or do you go into the close management area to the cell? If you're talking about main jail, we have a bullpen, and then we have the different blocks. I go to the block, to each block. If there is a crisis, of course, again, I've always got officers with me, but if there is a crisis in the blocks, then I go in the blocks all the way. I've been all the way to the back of the blocks, up the stairs in the corner, in emergencies. And also in booking, they're mostly glass. You can see everybody. Even if I'm inside the booking office part, I can see into, and of course, I roam freely on the outside and in the vestibule area,
He
especially when
may
that
be
door is
asking
open.
about closed management videotaping, like
Oh,
saying
okay.
that may
Yes,
be what he's saying. He's asking, do you look through like a window or
yes,
vestibule versus are they on
yes.
TV? Are they on closed
They are.
management TV?
Yes. Thank you. That makes sense. I'm like,
I
what are you
think that's
talking
what
about,
he's
Ruckus?
not
I'm
sure.
like, I
I don't
don't know
know.
what
I
you're
think that's what
asking.
I think
That
it is.
makes, that makes way more sense. Um, now if I just had light, yes, we do. But what we have is what we have is a mess right here. I'm just completely out of light. I don't know what happened. Oh my gosh. What we have, and it's dark here too. Ah. Okay, what we have is all of our cameras um are, they're just cameras, okay? They do not have sound. In the where we watch in the I don't want to say the word, but in the PC, in the medical ISO, because they're trying to harm themselves, we have cameras and somebody dedicated to watch those people at all times. And when you're talking about the lawyers' visits, they are in a dedicated room. There is a glass between them. Oh my God, this is just nuts. There is a glass between them, and there is a camera, but it does not have sound. It's just like your security or your surveillance kind of things, that you have outside, not the ring cameras where you can talk to them. But we can't hear what they're saying. We're just literally watching to make sure that nothing happens, and they aren't face to face with their attorneys because, as y'all, well, I think it's me. I'm just doing this and I don't mean to. Lights out. Anyway, yeah, it's just a thing where it's not record. I don't think it's recorded, or it wouldn't be unless something happened. But yeah. All right. Is that what you were saying, Ruckus? I hope it was. I don't know. I'm trying to explain everything. But I think that's probably what you're talking about.
One thing I wanted to bring up is the evidence return. There were multiple pages of items that were found in the Allen's home, and one of the things was that I think I counted 14 cell phones, and
Yeah.
so. I wondered a lot about this. At first, I was like, "Wow, that's an awful lot of cell phones." Did they all belong to Richard Allen?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking, well, how many cell phones have I had? And how many cell phones do I have in my house? I think I'm on my fourth iPhone, and I think before that I had 2 flip phones. So do I still have them? I think I have all the iPhones, but I don't think I have the flip phones anywhere. But would it be unreasonable to have two adults and maybe, the daughter had lived there at one point. Could that be a reasonable number of phones that just happen to be still at the
Mm-hmm.
house? I know I've kept them because I just don't want somebody, you can't really clean off all your data off these phones,
Right.
and you always kind of feel weird about turning that in and all that. Um, but I did think it was interesting because we still don't know, how did he communicate with Libby and Abby? Was he doing anything similar to what Kagan Klein was doing? Was he surveilling Kagan Klein? And they're in Kagan Klein's Anthony Schott's communications um, with the girls. So those are all like what ifs and unknowns. But I did think the 14 phones was interesting, that they found that many devices.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's. I know it sounds like, and I'm gonna tell you something, Tony. Not to scare anybody. I don't think that's a whole lot of fun. I mean, it is, but it's not. Yes, especially if you upgrade every year, you times that kind. 3 people in the house times a couple of years. It adds up fast. The other thing that people have really been talking about is the number of weapons that he
Mm.
had. Now, this is where I'm going to say, and I mean, being female, I think this is probably a little uh, more surprising, but this is me, I have 3 swords, 4 daggers, 2 machetes, and an axe.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I love weapons. I love weapons. I have never unalived somebody. Now, you don't come into my house because they're right there, uh, uninvited. But, so when it's to someone who collects weapons and who
Right.
likes them, you know, having all these, no, it's not weird. It's
Nothing.
not.
No, I'm totally with you on that. All the knives. People like knives. They have a bunch of them.
Yeah.
They collect it. They can become obsessed with it. So that was the least like weird thing of that. The important thing to know is that each knife, when it cuts, it has a certain serration to it, and they can trace a knife to a wound, and that's been done in countless cases. It's something again that people are going to argue about, just like the casings. But if they have a knife that matches the wounds on, Abby and Libby, then that will be significant. Now, a guy I work with is a former cop. He says you can never get blood off of a knife. I never heard that said before. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I
he's
don't know.
saying that the blood that no matter what, it's going to get down into the cracks in the wood and on the handle and things like that, and that you're not able to get that out of there. So we haven't seen anything in any discovery about DNA or blood or anything yet about that. But is it possible? I mean, it's been a while since they confiscated that stuff. Is it possible that the
Yeah.
defense is kind of holding back on that, like, or they don't have all that back yet from labs? I just don't know. Could they be like, kind of slow boating the discovery to the defense? I don't know, but you would think if one of those any of those things were found, blood on the knife or a matching knife, that we're going to hear about that in court for sure.
Yeah, and you would think that though that would, definitely be something that would be a big deal,
Yeah.
DNA evidence, and
Right.
I'm very sketchy. Let me show. We've got about 30 minutes. Let me grab this piece of paper because I want to know if you saw this. I mean, because again, prison. Yeah, I could go through all these things. Some of these things are all of the just all of the things that I highlighted are things that are cause for concern. The ones I didn't highlight are like, yeah, well, that's the way prison is. That's the way jail is. If you don't like it, then do something about reform, because this is the way it's going to be. But this right here, let me find, because this, it's not that I can't find it. I can't get it pulled up. All right. There was a paper. I think it's right here. It might be the one right before this. I was reading through this, and okay, I am not an attorney, as y'all know, so I'm reading this, but I'm looking at, they're talking about the ballistics, and I did not have time, to look up what this particular motion is. So if y'all know, please tell me. If I'm just being stupid out here, just let me know. But I see now, and this is a good move on the part of the defense. I mean, you try to get stuff thrown out of court. Of course you do. But Melissa Oberg is obviously the one that did the testing and the findings. And you will see in the in the uh, ballistics test that they show you, and it's in this paperwork somewhere. It says that it's subjective to, of course, the person who does it and their training, yada yada. Let me try to get. Hold on, I want to get all the comments off so you can read it. It's like my computer's just doing its own thing. Okay, but in this, because of the nature of it, did you read this, Tony, where it says they want this, basically, they said that the ballistics on that unspent bullet is inadmissible for the following reasons. Okay. Under Rule 401 and 402 of the Indiana Rules of Evidence, and I did look that up, it says, and I'm just going to read the highlighted parts, because the information will confuse and mislead the jury, all of which is in violation of Rule 403 of the Indiana Rules of Evidence, and testimony regarding the analysis and conclusions referenced in Exhibits A and B run afoul of Rule 702. And so it further says that what the defense is asking.
Oh, you disappeared.
I don't know what's up with this.
You're back.
Yeah, I don't know. It says sinking. Like it's sinking with my. What the heck? Anyway, it says that they don't want it to be mentioned in any way, shape, or form.
Of course not.
And so, or reference to in the court, et cetera, et cetera. And let me pull this up because I don't know what's going on here. All right. Let me shrink this down. I looked this up in the. Let me see if I can. Okay, this is the rules. This is Rule 403. And why it's not working, I don't know. But it says the court may exclude relevant evidence basically for the same reason. If it I promise you, I think somebody is just messing with me today. Like it keeps syncing. Why does my computer keep syncing? Anyway, it talks about basically the same thing because of the nature of what it is and the fact that it is debatable, which all things are, but basically they're wanting it thrown out because it says it goes against the rules of evidence and that it's misleading. Did you see that, and what did you think about that?
So my opinion about the defense is that all of the filings and their demeanor in court is annihilatory and hypervigilant. They try to strike down everything. It is a constant beat of the drum to everything that's filed in the 118 documents that we got. And that's just some of the there's lots of other documents we didn't get, obviously. So to me, these type of things are fought out in courtrooms all the time. This is evidence that is used, and let them fight it out in court. Let them get their experts together and and let the jury make a decision about it. There's nothing misleading or confusing about this. Um, Not in my mind, there isn't. From what I know about it, um, the other night on Court TV, they were covering this, and they had an FBI, a former FBI agent on, and he very clearly explained, um, you know, the value of a test like this, and he felt that it was a very um, usable uh, piece of evidence. And Vinny, the guy that moderates that, he said, "Well, you ought to speak for the prosecution in this case, then," because the guy really did a great job of explaining it. But no, so that's just my opinion. I think that they really need to allow it, and they need to let the experts, you know, uh, fight it
Yeah.
out. Yeah,
I
mean,
wondered if that ruling would have, I mean, since they brought it up, if
well,
it
oh
would
yeah.
have any
Well, I don't.
bearing.
I think that it'll be a turning point. It could be a turning point in this case.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's the only thing. I mean, there may still be, a bigger piece of evidence come, through in the, at some point we'll learn about. But at the moment, those are a couple of the really big things. The bullet and the confession.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I understand what the defense is doing.
Yeah.
If they were to throw that ballistics out because of the nature of it's controversial, and could it mislead the jury, and et cetera, et cetera, which in my opinion, there's a lot of things that are allowed in court that can mislead a jury. But
Right.
if you take the ballistics out, I mean, what have you got? A guy on a bridge.
I mean, I think you still have somebody who put themselves there,
Mm-hmm.
and keep in mind, they wouldn't even have got this guy if he hadn't gone and said this. If he had never, went up to that conservation officer and said, "Oh yeah, I was out there," they would have never figured this out.
Yeah, why do you think, and here's the thing, and I'm going to do some research into Dan Doolin, because, we have supposed
Mhm.
for a long time now that he may have been the conservation officer. However, and it's not until you see it in black and white you realize, okay, yeah, this one was the guy. Now I don't know him personally, and I have not been able to research him that much, but there are some people that have a big problem, mostly because of his past actions with a certain veteran, and yeah, you probably know who I'm talking about. That he's kind of a sketchy guy himself. So, if you're a conservation officer, this is my question. You have the power to arrest people. You're not like Barney Fife out there with one bullet and saying, okay, well, somebody gave me a confession, but you're an officer. You have a lot of authority. So why 6 years ago did you not keep saying, "Hey, guys, I've already told you. I interviewed a guy that says he was there." I have to question that. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I think that if his follow up thought was, who were the girls the guy saw? That it
Mhm.
wasn't, was this the guy that killed the girls? So then he passes this on, and he may just have assumed that it was uh, handled and looked at, and of course it wasn't. But that would be my take on it.
Yeah,
If but again, he's not. I understand they have all these arrest powers, but that's related to their like them coming across violations of game issues and things like that. They can't like pull somebody over for speeding or some.
no, but
No.
I mean,
But I just think that he, I mean, who knows? I mean, that for whatever reason, and we don't know the context of how Richard Allen brought it up. Did he know Richard Allen personally? Did he, how did they end up talking about this? I'm curious about that, how that encounter went, right?
yeah, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. One is if they had, I could more get on the same page with that, Tony, if they had just said there's a, we have a, a picture and they didn't release it, but they hammered in so many times about, does anybody know this guy, his mannerisms, his, blah, 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 bridge guy. He's been everywhere. And you are looking for a guy on the bridge. But Dan Doolin already talked to a guy who was on the bridge. To me, there is some kind of disconnect there, because they immediately, within a couple of days, they're like, hey, at first he was just a person of interest. So, Dan, what happened? Did you just, get amnesia?
Well,
That's just my thought.
But how did the wife, how did the daughter not suspect him? How did the people that lived on the street who'd seen him in a blue jacket and knew, you would think everybody would be paranoid of everybody, and certainly they would have, thought about him.
You would think, yeah.
That he was never tipped, hiding in plain sight. It's confounding, that so we just don't know. What how that all what the circumstances were that he told Dan Doolin this stuff, and what was Dan Doolin's role in turning it in. Why did Dan Doolin get the phone IDs? Those, like, if you go into your phone, you'll see they mentioned like two strings of numbers that are affiliated with the phone that aren't the phone number. Like, why is a conservation officer asking this guy for this if he doesn't, especially if he's not even thinking that this guy is involved with that? How did that come out?
Right.
So there's more we don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He knew, and I can even see Kathy Allen, if she saw his picture and said, or bridge guy's picture and said, hey, that looks like you. I mean, he could have honestly said, well, yeah, I told him I was there. Obviously, they don't think I'm a suspect because I admitted to it. So I can almost see where she could overlook it,
But he's never said, to his wife, yeah, that's me in that pictures. Yeah, they still keep showing that picture of me out in that bridge, but I didn't.
No, yeah.
That never happened, obviously, but we don't think it happened, but I mean, who, if you were innocent and that was you in that picture, you would be like, hey, yeah, that was me, but I had nothing to do with this. You would go beyond that. But again, like when I was talking, last week about the power and control issue, he's preemptively doing this strike to control the situation. He's going up to the officer before, and he doesn't know he's been videotaped. And so he doesn't think there's any harm in saying that, yeah, I was out there, because then if he does show up on a trail cam, or some people say, yeah, they saw this guy out there, he's like, oh yeah, I was out there, I already told him I was already out there. No, criminal's not going to do that. So anyhow, that's my thoughts on it. But yeah, there's a lot more questions we have a lot more that we do not know, certainly, about the conversation and the testimony.
Right.
Of the conservation officer. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I keep knocking my light out. I don't know. And,
I'm gonna buy you a light.
It's like my light works. I think there's a short in my plug, and I'm afraid to touch it, and my computer is really heating. My cord is heating up. I was going to read this. Kelt says ATF has a database which can link bullets to a type of gun. A computer does that match. Then a human determines if the bullet matches the gun, which makes it objective. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And again, you can't blame the defense for, doing everything they're doing to save him.
To do this.
Yeah. But I can't 100% say it's just the defense, because some of the things I read are just not, I know the reality, of a jail. Are they going to is the warden going to get up and say, anything negative? No. Right. No, he's not. Do prisoners lie? Yeah, they do. They make, BS lawsuits, but some of them are valid. So again, all this information that I'm reading tells me is that I need more information,
Right.
because
Right.
you can't tell. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, it's just one of these, it's one of those things that, we can debate. And I like to get your opinion. I know you're more of a middle of the road facts type of guy. And I'm like, I'm outside, I'm a 360 thinker, so I
Mhm.
want to look, and I don't have to have facts if I have something that could lead to facts. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Potentially, is he suffering from psychosis, brought on by the
Mhm.
conditions? I'll entertain that thought. Let me try to prove it or disprove it. I guess it's not, there's not as much stuff as I hoped would be in the documents.
Right.
I was hoping we would see something, even what they were searching for. Oh, but here's a question, Tony. I thought
Yeah.
about this. All right. If they knew that they were looking for a 40 caliber bullet, and that was wasn't that on Ron Logan's search warrant also?
It was not, because they'd already got the guns from Ron Logan's. They knew what kind of guns he had, and
Okay.
that was part of violation of um, his DUI uh, terms, that he was not supposed to have guns, and he had told
Right.
them that he didn't want them to search his property because he had guns. So then when they had a search warrant that goes, but it was just to get the guns. So they didn't have to be looking for that bullet at that time, So
Right.
so they already knew that he didn't have a 40 cal. Um, so here's something interesting that a friend of mine came up with, and he said, they knew that they had a 40 caliber, weapon somehow involved with this, and they were pretty certain that there was a black car. Now, couldn't you just look up all the, uh, all the 40 cal, gun owners that
Yes.
so and scrub that against, small black cars? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how many people would it come up with for, like, even if you did like for 50 miles,
Right.
I mean, you might have been able to get him that way right there and then. And I thought that this guy's pretty smart that came up with that, and I was like, yeah, that's spot on as far as
Yeah.
why didn't they do that?
Well, I didn't have the car in it, but that's what I was going to ask
Mm,
you.
mm,
Is if you were looking for a certain caliber bullet, I mean, wouldn't you check everybody especially in that town, wouldn't you check all registered weapons that
yeah,
could against, you
yeah,
know, and so you would think that at least, and then you would have come up with, to me, this is my thinking, I
yeah,
would have checked for all their, knowing that, criminals usually don't register their guns,
right,
but um, if you had a registered gun with a 40 caliber bullet and a guy that said he was there, boom.
right.
So, yeah, it's like, can y'all really be this inept, or is there?
Well, the guy that said he was there, that piece was lost, so it wouldn't have mattered what else he said, but thank God they found it, and you know,
I mean, I go round and round in my own head. Was he involved? Um, I still, I still have trouble believing that he is like a sole perpetrator. Um, I think there's other people involved, as does Nick McClellan. I mean, he's saying there's other actors. So, and he's on murder, one, two.
felony murder, yeah, right.
Yeah. So, I
Well,
mean,
and to play off the comment on what you're saying, that was one of my surprises, that there was nothing in the documents that seemed to point at there being other perpetrators. Nothing that I saw, um, and maybe they very intentionally withheld anything like that, so
yeah.
that it would not set off a chain of reactions or anything like that.
Um, I just and Samantha, you have a good point. Yes, Ellie was out there, and they used the same caliber. They used actually a Sig Sauer P226 as well. Now they're up into the 227, but I mean, that was a law enforcement weapon. So, what are you going to say?
I
You know,
mean,
they,
we don't know that the police that were there that day had that weapon. 9 millimeter is very common. You know, so Glock is a real common. That's
mm-hmm.
probably the most common police firearm.
Yeah.
But it would certainly. I mean, that's a defense question. You know, who to subpoena. You know, the police officers that were in the woods that day. You know, what guns did they carry? You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
so if there's a guy who was there that was right there at that scene that had a Sig Sauer 226 40 cal, then yeah, then but you could do some tests on both the guns and see if that can be differentiated.
Yeah.
And through the same type of ballistic tests to see if that if you can tell the guns apart. So.
Now, wait a second. I haven't heard. Indy Pam says AMPD detectives found 40 caliber spent shells. I don't know. I haven't heard that, but that's not. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things we haven't heard though. Ruckus, if you're still here, I was going to say, yeah, you were welcome to come up. I'm having so many technical difficulties on this one, but if you do want to come up and you want to have a discussion about anything, I mean, we can. I've got like 10 minutes left. Or I turn into a pumpkin. But I mean, I honestly think there is a whole lot of. There's still as many questions. Like I said, there was a lot more that these papers have been read over and over and over, and I don't want to just do them to pieces, but there are a lot of things in the jail treatment that makes me wonder. Obviously, but I will say this: obviously, there were issues with the video. Okay, because we got a restraining order for that. And then there is one more thing. Have you seen this? Come on. Let me get back to the last picture I have. I don't know why. Okay. Have you seen this? Somebody posted this today, a link. And if I am reading this correctly, it looks like they are going to transfer him to Cass County. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Like I'm not even moving this with the mouse. It's just doing it. It's over here just wilding. Let's see. But yeah, it looks like to me that they are going to move him. They've made that decision. And I know that you said Nick McClellan and Tobe, nobody had an objection to moving him, right? At the hearing?
There really was not. There really was not. They just. I think there was just counter. Thought that is he really going to get anything different by going to Cass? Is he going to actually get as much medical care, as much psychiatric care? Is he going to be safer there? Is any of that actually going to happen? But no, I think Nick McClellan stated that even before any of this, that he had no objection to him being moved. So it seemed It was more of an issue of the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department. One of their big concern was the transportation, and that it would fall back on them to provide the transportation, which they didn't feel like they could adequately do. So yes, it does appear to be what that is. It's not signed or dated. I wish it had that on it. But yes, it does appear that is there, and I have not heard anybody talk about that. So that's a good catch.
Yeah. So anyway, I feel like this. I know just from our state, and we have a fairly decent sized county jail. And I know Cass County. Here's the thing: Cass County just had has a new facility. I don't know when that started. I don't know what their situation was in last fall. But apparently they've got a nice facility. Even in a county jail, there are just different rules. Okay,
Right.
you're gonna have. Let me see how much time we got. You're gonna have more medical people on staff in a prison.
Right.
You're gonna have more amenities. Now, I'll just be honest with you. This is straight up the truth. And Ruckus could probably say it probably happened where he worked too. A lot of people that we house for DOC, we're just waiting for the prison train to run and to come get them. Those people are really excited about going to prison because they're going to get better amenities, they're going to get better treatment, and they're going to have better access to drugs.
Mm.
And look, I love my coworkers. Most of them are absolutely wonderful corrections officers. But do we get people that are dirty and they're in there and they're bringing contraband and all that kind of stuff? Are they cruel? Do they do things that are illegal? Absolutely. I mean, when we catch them, we fire them. But imagine that, and we have a much smaller staff. You imagine a big prison. It is much easier to get away with stuff, especially I don't know. Traditionally, you have more access to drugs. Not that they don't get it in our jail from time to time, but so I guess that's the thing. If you're talking medical care, I think at this point they have to, Tony.
Yeah.
I think they don't have a choice because of the public outcry, because of what the defense is saying. They're going to have to move him whether it's a good idea or not, and give him another chance. Don't you think, somewhere else?
Yeah, I think that it's probably in the works, especially, having read that. I mean, and just, of course, to, try to make sure that there's no chances there's going to be a plea or something to throw the case out because of, some stupid thing, so yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if that happened here. Maybe it's already happened. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think they have. Well, I don't know if they've actually transported him, but it looks like there's an order to do so.
Right.
And do I think, as a whole, he's going to get? He's probably not going to have as many amenities and stuff. But I will say this: if his health and mental status significantly improve, that is going to look bad on Westville. Don't you think, or no?
I mean, yeah, it might look bad on Westville. It's true. I don't know though, as far as like it being anything, any kind of big conclusion about if now he's going to, if what he's said, he's already said.
Right.
And and regardless of if he snaps out of this or not, but we will see. It seems like there's a strange turn in the case.
Yeah, there is, and that's who.
I said I've got some hungry kitties calling in the back.
Oh, like furry kitties?
What's that?
Oh, are you talking about like furry kitties?
Yeah, I'm talking about my cats. I didn't know if you could hear that. I got one.
I could. I thought they were children. I thought there was
cats.
Well, my cats are, I've only got one cat, but my son has more cats. He lives there with his cats. But anyway, yeah, I thought that was an actual. I thought it was like grandkids or something back there. I was like, oh, he's got some kids in the background. Well, at least Sachi's been sitting here and she hasn't been tearing up things.
Right.
Let me just make sure, because it's almost time to leave. There are 2 mental facilities about 8 minutes or so drive from the jail in Cass County. I don't know if, once you're an inmate, though, you know, I don't know how they do it there. I'll just tell you this: if you're talking about taking him to see another psychiatrist or something like that, um, most physicians and people like you have to be contracted by the jail, even for things that are in any other way. Like, I'll just be honest with you, most doctors won't see an inmate. Okay, has to be in house. Occasionally, like when we're trying to get OBGYN services, we only have one in the county that'll see an inmate. So is that going to be helpful? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they have contracts with only certain people can see them, and et cetera, and so on. So
Yeah.
But
All right.
well, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. Enjoyed all the comments, and I think covered a lot here. There's probably still some other things that I have not seen hidden away in these documents that I haven't noticed. So I'll probably still be reading over next week.
Oh, I know. I'm going to be looking at them too. I mean, like I said, I worked a lot this week, so I skimmed them. I listened to some other people, but I always like to hear somebody else's point of view. I know that we look at things different, and to me, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
It's very important that you look at, and consider. Okay, see how we do this, people. We are adults and we get along. Okay, there's no name calling, no
conversation.
Yes.
No need for trolling or hatefulness.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, and I think we've gotten most of your questions. We have very little time left. I'm gonna go ahead and say goodnight to y'all. By the way, I am going live with Coach Kev on Sunday night at 7, I think, and we're gonna follow up with Carol Stanhope, and I've got some other things in the works. So I just watch, and Tony, just let me know. I'd like to get a panel on here. It'd be great if Ruckus wanted to come in.
Yep.
And I don't mind. I don't mind a good debate. I don't even mind a heated debate, unless people are disrespectful, and that's not okay.
Sure.
But anyway, thank you so much for coming. And I mean, I'm sure we'll do this again as more stuff comes out. Yeah. All right.
Look forward to
it. And tell your kitties good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm still here, but I'm leaving. Like, I'm really leaving this time. All right. I'm about to cut off. So I'm going to leave you. Please leave any comments below, any questions that you have, especially if you have any questions for Tony at a later date or anything. Just, you know how this works. Until Sunday night, please stay safe over this weekend. And whatever you do, stay silky.